Hey guys, Final Death Star here, and today we're talking about the intolerance of the fandom towards female characters in Star Wars, or the alleged intolerance towards female characters, but specifically the sequel trilogy characters, not necessarily all characters, but the sequel trilogy characters. There are some out there, some of the media, who don't really seem to understand why the fans have had such an issue with Rey and Rose. They believe that it's some sort of intolerance towards female characters that, you know, us of the fandom who have been kind of vocal about not really being able to relate to these characters. It's because they're not white male led characters, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So this article is entitled "A Star Wars Author on the Intolerance Within the Fandom," and it's from pastemagazine.com, and he starts off, there's a little quote here. He says, "Take a deep breath and remember that you love Star Wars." So let's do that together. Oh yeah, I love Star Wars. How can I forget that? I love Star Wars. Okay, guys, well, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Until next time, lock your doors. Over there. Yeah, okay. And then there's a picture of Rose and Finn here. And, how fitting that there's a picture of Rose underneath where it says, "Remember you love Star Wars." Because if I learned anything from Rose, it's that we're going to win not by fighting what we hate, but by saving what we love. So that's what I'm doing with this video. I'm trying to save what I love, Star Wars. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to go through parts of this article. It's kind of long. It doesn't veers off in different directions, but I'm just going to kind of keep it to the main points of the article. So it says, "On balance, being a Star Wars fan has lately been somewhat of a more exhausting experience than parenting my girlfriend's 4 kids. It's easy to forget that with the new glitzy age of competently directed blockbusters courtesy of Disney's stewardship of the franchise, but you never have to wait long for a reminder." Okay, so competently directed blockbusters courtesy of Disney's stewardship of the franchise. Boy, it sounds like the writer's getting a check from Disney, doesn't it? Who's this? Bob Iger that wrote it? No, it's not. Okay. So he says there is a growing intensity, if not in actual numbers, wrong-headed and inexplicable parts of the fandom, the very worst members of all whom seem to be aggravated at the very idea that this sandbox of space wizards and mechanically unrealistic starcraft is now being infiltrated by girls and minorities. It's something that Kevin J. Anderson, author of books that basically continued the Star Wars story between the original trilogy and when the prequels came out in 1999, has wrestled with. So we're talking. So this is basically this is the author that the article is about. It's Kevin J. Anderson, and this is what he has to say. "The first time I saw the troglodyte fan reaction with racism, sexism, and intolerance was in the minority flood of reaction against The Last Jedi," Anderson says. "I couldn't believe the open hatred which continued with the Solo movie." Okay, first of all, the first time he's saying he noticed it was The Last Jedi. So, Rey has been has been in 2 movies now. I think most people liked Force Awakens. I did. The majority, I think, did. I had no issue with her being a woman character. I thought she was overpowered. Things kind of came a little too easy for her, which we'll get into a little later. I think that's the main problem with that. But there wasn't a big fan reaction against the fact that there was a woman lead. And also Jyn Erso in Rogue One. I don't remember hearing anything about that. The rebellion seemed to be much more full of non-white, non-male, non-human characters, while the Empire was a bunch of white guys, Anderson says. "The rebellion is pretty obvious as an open-minded government against the racism, sexism, despotism of the Empire. The new films are very clear in their portrayal of the New Order as very white, very intolerant." Okay. When Timothy Zahn was tasked with writing his landmark Star Wars novel trilogy that began with Heir to the Empire in 1991, which are fantastic, he created the Grand Admiral Thrawn character, an alien from a species called the Chiss, and a tactical genius who emerged to menace the fledgling New Republic. that had arisen in the 5 years since the rebellion's triumph over the Empire in Return of the Jedi. He is perhaps one of the most enduring characters of the expanded universe, so beloved by fans that he's been brought back into the official canon by appearing as a chief antagonist in the Star Wars Rebels cartoon, which the author says, which I don't like all that much, but whose creators I haven't harassed or threatened. Okay, so the author's already kind of wishy-washy. I don't know really what he's trying to say, because he's saying that fans who have a problem with these movies are sexist and I guess bigoted because they're non-human, non-white led cast, I don't know. But he's basically saying that. But then he goes on to say that one of the most beloved favorite characters, who was an Imperial officer, was a non-human, non-white alien. And he was so beloved by fans that they brought him back into, canon in Rebels because people loved him so much. So that kind of goes against his original point of the fact that we don't like these movies because they're not like white male dominated, cast members. Anderson's works include the Jedi Academy trilogy, which introduced readers to some of the inner workings of the Empire's vicious military machine. Incidentally, they also introduce us to several other female characters. The female alien character Kwai Zux was a captive super weapon designer, and the female character Admiral Dalla was a ruthless antagonist marshaling the shattered remains of the Empire's military machine to oppose the New Republic and the rebellion that they had set up. Like Leia before them, and like Rose and Rey, they also have goals and motivations and narrative agency. See, that's the issue with Rose and Rey. We'll get to that, though, after I finish that. Just making a couple more points here. If Princess Leia could be a competent, tough leader for the rebellion, then why wouldn't there be similar strong female characters in the Empire, Anderson says. Since women are half the population, then why shouldn't half of the main characters be female? It's sort of a no-brainer. Yeah. Timothy Zahn's work, was also the one which gave the world Mara Jade, the female assassin in the Empire's employ whose fixation on and vengeance against Luke Skywalker eventually gave way to her marriage to him. The fact he viewed complex female characters as lacking in the movies, and the fact that fans and geeks news outlets are still breathless at any mention of her, is in the same sentence as official Star Wars canon, tells you all you need to know about what a need this has fulfilled for fans. Yes, that's a female character who has appeared in badass video games, novels, and fan films for decades, all because the Star Wars fandom can't get enough of her. And that is so true. He does say up here, he says, in the case of Mara, she's a strong female character, which were few and far between in the Star Wars movies, but she's also flawed and searching, dare we say it, human. At the same time, she's highly competent at her job. Women can identify with her, while men would like to have her at their side in trouble. And that was what Timothy Zahn said in an interview in 2008 when he was questioned about Mara Jade. So, again, this is the issue. The author's contradicting himself, because he's saying that he can't understand why the fans don't like these female characters, and he's saying, well, is it because we can't relate to these characters? I don't understand it. You look at that past. All these characters have been so great, and so are Rose and Rey. And are we sexist because we don't like Rose and Rey? No, it's ridiculous. You're stating how popular Mara Jade and other female characters from the EU, the past books, are. So clearly, this is not an issue of having a male-led cast, and the fact that the female leads are making fans upset, and that's why people are reacting the way they are to Last Jedi. That's not the issue, because clearly there are tons. Asajj Ventress is another character. Ahsoka, another character. All these great female characters. Padme, Leia. There's a ton of great female characters that the fans love. And the issue with Rose and Rey is that they're not written that well. They haven't had the struggles. They haven't had the character development. The problem with Rey is, as this article states, she is not a flawed and searching, dare we say, human character like they describe Mara Jade. Timothy Zahn describes Mara that way. She's a fascinating character. She was the Emperor's hitman who was sent after Luke to kill him, obsessed with him, and ended up falling in love and being, they got married. I just don't see anything like that with Rey. I mean, Rey has sort of wishy-washy feelings with Kylo Ren. There's this whole, Reylo thing where they have the Force connection, but they didn't develop it enough. I mean, they start to lead into something, and then, like, the end of Last Jedi, Rey's pretty much in the same spot she was at the beginning of the film. Their relationship hadn't really developed any further. I mean, they kind of developed it a little bit, and then just broke it apart, and that was it. How much more interesting would it have been had Rey gone to the dark side? Had Rey decided to join Kylo Ren? What a change, and what a great little arc of her character, some development. I think that would have made her much more interesting than kind of being the same cookie cutter, hero she's been. And I don't mind Rey that much, but, there's definitely things that need to be, and it's going to be hard in one movie to do this, but to be developed within her. Where's her struggle? You see Luke in the original trilogy, he goes from a farm boy to seeing his mentor be sacrificed, cut down in front of him, and then he goes and trains a little bit on Dagobah. He goes to fight Vader unprepared. He gets his arm cut off, and then he finds out that Vader's his father. There's such a character arc just within the first two movies. Now, in the first two movies with Rey, she was an orphan. She found Han Solo. She gets in with the rebellion. She gets captured by Kylo Ren. She somehow uses Kylo Ren's own Force ability mind reading trick against Kylo Ren without any training. She's able to, do the same thing that he's doing to her. She does a mind trick on the Stormtrooper, who's Daniel Craig, 007, as a little cameo, but does a mind trick on him and gets him to drop his weapon and, walk out the door and leave her to escape. And then in her first lightsaber battle, she beats Kylo Ren, who is trained by Luke, who is trained by Snoke, and she somehow beats him, and she's had like zero training. You're not going to tell me that's a little suspect. You're not going to tell me, like, where's her struggle? Where's her flawed character? She hasn't had any major obstacles that she's had to, like, break where we can, like, relate to her. It's like she's a superhero, it's kind of unrelatable. And that's the issue. You don't see that with these other great characters. With Asajj Ventress, I mean, there's depth in there. She's good, or she's evil. She realizes that the Emperor and Dooku are kind of using her, and then she goes against that. There's such great change in her character and development. Same thing with Ahsoka. Ahsoka's good, and then she kind of realizes the Jedi, she leaves the Order because she doesn't believe she's being, like, accused of something that wasn't her, and she can't believe that they're not trusting her, so she decides to walk away. There's such development there. It's such a great character. We don't have that with Rey. Rose, kind of the same thing. Rose is sort of thrown into this, to the second movie, to Last Jedi, forced on us. And then there was the thing with me was the whole Canto Bight scene, because we have this side story, one of the sub-stories that's going on. There's several main stories going on at once, and this is one of them. And her and Finn go to Canto Bight to find DJ. Well, it ends up being DJ, who's the codebreaker. That's not who they went to find, but he happened to conveniently also be the second codebreaker in the universe who can help them with what they needed. So, but then there's these other little sub-stories within that story, and that story didn't even need to happen in the whole scope of the movie, because, like, they ended up going to the planet anyway, so they didn't really need the codebreaker to break the code to stop the tracking machine. It's like they didn't need any of that. But then there's these little sub-stories within the Canto Bight scene of, like, the animal cruelty and the stable boys, and then there was, like, the story with DJ about, like, the arms dealers and how they're everything's not as pretty on the outside. It's not what you think it is, which is like, okay, there's a lot going on, and it was like too much at once, and it was like just get to the planet. Get to the codebreaker, get us moving with this story. But you keep throwing out all these little sub-stories and narratives that got a little bit annoying, and that was the problem. It's like Rose was the character that kept leading us into these annoying sub-stories, so of course it's going to be taken out on her, and it was she just wasn't well written. So again, it's not an issue of the female characters in the current movies that we don't like. I mean, it is an issue that we don't like them, but it's not an issue that they're female. It's an issue that they're not being like written well, and they're not being set up well. There's not enough change. There's not enough discovery. There's not enough flawed nature in them. They just seem to be like kind of the cookie cutter heroes. And when we seem to voice our opinions about this, it's met with this kind of stuff where it's like they're not really getting why we don't like these characters, why we're not identifying with these characters. It has nothing to do with gender, as I just tried to point out. So it's just another article kind of missing the point of, why we're not as connected to these new female characters. It has nothing to do with gender. It's just that they're not as relatable because they haven't had the same kind of struggles and development as all the characters that were mentioned in this article. And then, the ones that weren't, like Ahsoka and Asajj Ventress. So let me know what you guys think. Am I off base here? Do you guys kind of see where I'm trying to get to? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you liked the video, give it the old thumbs up. And until next time, subscribe as well. And until next time, lock the doors and hope they don't have blasters.